everyone, it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. The technique for today's video is stepping up your die cuts, and we're going to use embossing powder and Distress Oxide to create this card, and it's going to be a stepped up version of just cutting things out and gluing them together. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is just if you want to step your card up to that next level. So I cut out the base from Honeybee Stamps Birthday Cake die set from that manila color cardstock. I cut out the layers from white cardstock, and then we're going to use the stamp set that you just saw, which is called Make a Wish, to emboss some of those layers and emboss like the icing on the top. So I took 3 of the interior layers, and I'm going to be using the Spun Sugar Distress Oxide to ink them up. Now, I decided to hold them in place by using the ruler because they're so skinny, it's hard to keep them into place. I could have put them back into the original cutout piece and then washi taped the back of them, but I honestly didn't think of that until I started doing the voiceover, so little too late for that, but this worked just fine. I'm going to ink up all 3 layers, and you can barely see it on camera, but you can see it in person. And then we're going to ink up the other 2 pieces with Ground Espresso Distress Oxide. And this is the first time that I use this. And I have a new brush, and I'm not really sure what I think of these brushes. I got them off of Amazon, and I thought they were the exact same ones that I had bought before. They're not. They have a different kind of bristle to them, and I feel like I keep showing, I feel like I felt looking at it. I'm not really sure what I think of them, so I'm going to have to use them a little bit more before I decide if I really like them, but I bought 20 of them, so I guess I'm going to have to like them. So I'm just putting that Ground Espresso onto this piece, and then after I do both pieces, I'm going to wipe off my mat, and then we're going to get ready to emboss. I did heat these up in between, like off camera. I heated them up on level 1 on my heat gun, just because Distress Oxide stays wet a lot longer, and we were doing embossing, so I didn't want the embossing powder to stick. You will see later on that I didn't do the best job of it. I probably was more impatient, and I probably should have dried the Ground Espresso first because I feel like I put more of that on, but it comes out fine in the end. So I'm going to put the 3 pieces in there, so I did that so that I could just put the embossing, what the heck do you call it? The light kaolin clay is what I use to go over top of it, like the anti-static powder tool to go over all of the pieces so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to places we don't want it to. So I picked the squiggly line one for all 3 of the pink layers, and then I'm going to use this Martha Stewart embossing powder that I've had for like 10 years in my stash. I'm finally getting around. I'm sure I've used it before, but you use such a little amount when you heat emboss that I've had these forever. So you're going to see me try to pick these up because I didn't want to put my finger where the embossing powder was, and I'm just kind of going to tap them off, shake them off, and do that for all 3 of them. And I'm going to put them to the side because I'm going to pour embossing powder over both the pink and the brown layers before I go ahead and heat up anything. So after I've done all 3 of them, I'm going to pour the embossing powder back into the container, and you really don't use it. Looks like you use a lot there, but you don't use a lot. So then I am going to do the chocolate chips for the chocolate layer, and I'm going to be using an embossing powder from Kindred Stamps, and I believe this is the first time I've ever used this. This came with the it's called Historic Family or something like that, that I had bought a while ago in a kit, and I just had the embossing powder around, and I've never used it, and I thought it was a really cool color. I didn't realize it was as shiny as it is. It makes the chocolate chips look really shiny, but it is what it is. You know, I do like it. They don't really look like chocolate chips, but that's what they're supposed to be. So I'm going to do the same exact thing, and here is where you're going to see that I didn't do the best job of letting these dry or drying them because the embossing powder does stick to a couple of areas that it shouldn't, but I just tried to take off as much as I could, and again, in the end, it doesn't really matter because when you bake a cake, the chocolate chips are going to spread and, they're never going to be perfect little morsels. So here you can see, I really can't see them. I'm heat embossing that. So I thought I did a better job of recording this and you'd actually be able to see the embossing. So because it's such a light color, I think that's what you can see the powder right now, but I think it's harder to see as it goes and as is actually embossed because it's a shiny, real light. You can probably see the shine on there, but it's a real light color pink. So I did the chocolate chips and the pink layers, and now I'm going to go back in with some ground espresso and Distress ink the top of the card as well as the spine. I'm going to mask that off as well and use the same embossing, Distress ink or Distress oxide to go over the side of the card. I do have to go get another piece of tape, and when I do this, I somehow get ink on the card. So I do go back in with my I think it's my Mono Sand eraser and try to erase some of it. But the good part is that most of it is actually covered up with the layers, so you're not going to really see in the end. And I apologize for my head. This is one of the videos that Lucy didn't actually make an appearance in, which is kind of funny, but my head does make an appearance. I did have to cut some more of it out because I had to keep leaning over top to make sure that I was actually on the embossing lines or that I was, inking up the right part of the cake. So there you go. You can see now I have, that's where I got some of the ink on there, but again, it'll be fine. So I just wanted it to actually look like a piece of cake and have that icing on the edge. So now I dried it off camera. I used my heat tool on one again, like I did before, and heat embossed the top of it with the ground espresso just to try to make sure that the Distress oxide was dry. It did not work. I didn't wait long enough. And when I pour the I keep saying the wrong words. Geez, words are hard today. Once I pour the embossing powder on, you're going to notice that I have it all over the place. It's sticking to the Distress oxide, and that's just because that Distress oxide ink stays wet for so much longer than regular ink. So it makes it great to emboss with if you're going to use that. But if you're using it not to emboss, just as a bottom layer, you really have to wait for it to dry. And as we all know, I'm super impatient. So I'm just taking a brush and trying to flick off some pieces there. And now this is where you can really see the heat embossing. I love seeing that magic of how it turns to that really shiny color. And I loved that color on the icing because I thought it made it really stand out. I felt it made it look like one of those really high-end cakes with the really cool icing design on the top of it. I loved it. I knew I had to use that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glue from Honeybee Stamps, and I am going to do I'm going to do 3 of the layers and put on the pink ones first and then alternate with the chocolate ones. When I was looking at this, I was trying to figure out, did I want to do a rainbow kind of card? Because, the girls' birthdays are coming up and they love anything rainbow. But I thought that I just wanted to do something a little bit classier. And, I love the color combination of brown and pink. So I decided to go with that. Once I have all these layers glued down, that is the end of the card. I didn't stamp anything on the inside. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. And I will see you guys again real soon for another video. Bye!